Sure. Dear Holy God, thank you for this evening, this beginning of our Sabbath. Thank you for being with us and the wonderful discussion that we had just a little bit ago prior to us getting started here. I invite the Holy Spirit to be here with us tonight, to guide and direct our minds and open our minds to understanding of this message that you're teaching us. And all these things I ask in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so we have a couple of you here with us that aren't always with us on Wednesdays. And so I'm hoping that those of you that are with us on Wednesdays, that you can, like I said, I want us to do a review. Let me get the right screen up here. Okay, so for those that are not here, one of you that is normally here, let's do what we've been doing. Okay, so for those that haven't been here, we've been working on better understanding 9/11, the waymark of 9/11, and all the events that take place at 9/11. These are based on Aaron's notes, and we've gone through the first three. We're on the fourth one, but we've really been trying to focus on is being able to understand it and experience it to where we're able to fluently then teach it. So, so if you haven't been here during the previous studies, they're all posted and the notes have all been sent out. But I'd like to do what we've been trying to do every night, is ask one of you that has been here, or if you've not been and have been watching the videos, let's go back through and break down again the 12 prophetic events that occurred at on September 11th. And starting again with Article 1, and the four winds were restrained. Who can do a summary on the four winds being restrained and the third woe began? Always a big silence. And I know you guys know.
Article 1, the four winds were restrained and the third woe began. The four winds represent the radical Islam, and they were restrained on our line on November 9th of 2001. And that's when the third woe began. So the four winds, so where do we get that from? So when we look at the Millerite line, that started from 1798. That was the first angel arrived, which was Miller. And he made some predictions. And the predictions were made that by using the year-day principle. But those were just his predictions of the first angel. And so in August 11th, well, then Josiah Litch came along and wanted to prove that Miller's prediction was correct using the methodology of the year-day principle. So what Josiah Litch did, using that methodology of year-day principle, predicted that on August 11th, 1840, radical Islam would be restrained. And he was correct. that's when the Ottoman Empire, I mean, this is the simple version of it. The war has been going on between 39 and 41. But he predicted it that August 11th, 1840, radical Islam would be restrained. And he used that same methodology that Miller used. And because he was correct, Litch, he proved that Miller's methodologies was correct, which empowered the first angel's message. So when we come to our line, we bring that line above ours, and saying that because August 11th, 1840, radical Islam was restrained, we take that line and come to our line and say at 9/11, which was not really 9/11, but that was the beginning of the third woe, radical Islam was restrained on November 9th, which gave empowerment to the first angel's message, which in our time was Elder Jeff. And Elder Jeff began the methodology of line upon line. And so using the line upon line methodology of Elder Jeff, we also proved that on November 9th, 2001, radical Islam was restrained by using our methodology, not a day for a year, as Miller did, but the line upon line methodology. And we also knew that at that time, the third woe began. There's more we can add on. If there's others out there who can add on to this, please do.
Yeah, who could add on to the third woe, and how did we know that it was that it was connected to Islam?
The first woe was Islam. Second woe was Islam. The third woe has to be Islam.
Yeah. So when he predicted, when Josiah Litch predicted, what was he actually predicting? He was predicting that you'd have see the restraint of Islam, the fall of the Ottoman Empire, but what was he basing it on?
The 315 or 300, what was it?
391 years and 15 days in
15
Revelation
days,
9.
Yeah.
Which was what? The end of what?
The Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. In the context of Revelation 9, what was it?
So that was the end of the second woe.
Right. So what do we find out about the first and second woe? Is it the first plus the second equals the third? What was the first and the second woe?
So the first woe hurts, second woe kills, and the third will both hurt and kill.
Right. Okay. Is everybody okay on that? There's probably more, but you guys got a lot of it. We also went into, I think, a little bit of Islam, some of the references for Islam being the locust in the east, Genesis 16:12, he's a wild, Ishmael's a wild ass, Revelation 9 is the horses, and then 20 MR 2:16:6, that's the angry horse seeking to break loose. So we were able to connect the horses to Islam as well. Okay, so who wants to give a summary of number 2? Which actually Phil did some of it already for us. Christine, can you do number 2? Phil pretty much did it in his.
Yeah, I was reading through to make sure I got, okay, so we know that the first angel's message started, okay, so what line should I do? Should I compare them? Because we talk about both.
You're using Miller, using just the Millerite line for now.
Okay, so in the Millerite line, the first angel's message comes in 1798, and then the second message comes, the second angel's message comes in 1844, and we find that in that second article that the angels come in 2 sets, right? And so but that would be on our part. So in the and then it's the second angel is empowered at the Sunday law, and we know that I forget which revelation, where it talks about the angel. Is it? Oh, okay. So I might be talking about Article 3. Sorry.
That's okay. Just the first angel empowered and then the arrival of the second.
Okay, and yeah, and that's at 1844, October 22nd or 23rd.
What about on the Millerite line? That the one year with 1844 you're referring to is the line of Adventism in the great.
Yeah, that's the line of Adventism, and on the Millerite line, it's the first angel comes in 1798, but the second angel comes in 1840 when the Ottoman Empire is that, what do we call it, restrained? When the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire gives over his power to the three countries, Russia, Britain, and Turkey, I think. And that's when Islam, they consider, say, Islam is restrained. And that's at 1840. But I'm not sure.
Anybody else? Or no, are you not done yet? Sorry.
I'm better at Article 3, I think.
I'll pick on you on the next one then. Okay. So, anybody else? Number 2. The first angel being empowered. What empowered it at the second, in the arrival of the second?
We could also use the line of Omega of ancient Israel at the time of John the Baptist and the Christ, Jesus. We can use that line. So the first angel was John the Baptist, and he proclaimed the coming of the Messiah. And so when the Messiah did come and got baptized, 27 AD, he was the second angel, and the Holy Spirit in form of a dove descended upon him, and the voice of the Father saying, "This is my Son." So the Father and the Holy Spirit confirmed that this was this was the Christ, and confirmed that the first angel's message which was John the Baptist.
So you have a confirming of the methodology again.
Yes.
So you have a confirming of in the Millerite history, the methodology is confirmed, which is the empowerment of the first angel. And that's the arrival of the second message. So that's how we're able to know that 9/11, with the connection of Islam and the confirmation of the methodology, that we're able to place 9/11 as our second waymark. Because we remember that the line of, I can switch it over to, I gotta move a couple things on my screen. Which one do I want? Oh, it's in this one, sorry. It's in the same one. So what Christine was referencing was this great controversy line here that is the line of Adventism, the line that Ellen White gives us, that the information she gives us 1798 as the time of the end. She gives us 1844 as the arrival of the second angel's message. And then she gives us the Sunday law at the end of the world, close of probation, and second advent. And we haven't gotten into fractals, but to go beyond that. But what you also have here is the Millerites had Christ return in 1863, and then you have Millerites, the church. So you remember there would be two calls, first the church, and then there's a call to the world. And so August 11th, with the restraint of Islam, is the second waymark. So we're able to place that second waymark here. So you have the empowerment of the methodology, you have the empowerment of the methodology, the arrival of the second, and then the end of ancient Israel, which Phil was just mentioning. You have the first angel here, you have the baptism, and then God saying, "This is my son," confirming, you have Jesus being the Messiah, the arrival of the second angel, and God confirming the message of the first messenger. So all of that, and then we may touch on this later, why this one's different for anybody that doesn't know that. Okay, so then number 3, I think we just basically have summarized that within all of what we're putting together. That God enters into a covenant. That's the only thing we haven't mentioned yet, but God enters into a covenant with his people after he proves the messenger and the message. So in the line of Christ, it's confirming the message of John the Baptist that the Messiah would come, as Phil just said. In the Millerite history, it's confirming of the Ottoman Empire would collapse. That confirms the methodology. And in our history, 9/11 then is confirming line upon line. And it's at that time God enters into a covenant. And then also the SDA leadership was passed by. Okay, so is this where you said you're good, Christine? Did you say Article 3 or number 3?
I think Article 3, when adding all the angels together, I finally kind of started to get it.
Do you want to, or do you want to try number 5? Go for number 5.
Okay. Okay, so in on the line of the 144,000, the early rain began at 9/11.
What model do we use?
The agricultural model.
Right. So there's the agricultural model. You see the hand of God, the 5 fingers, the 4 dispensations, and you see that all lines up in that same row.
Yeah, so that second line lines up with 9/11. So we've already, so because it starts at the second waymark, the early rain, and so the precursor of the angel of Revelation.
Are you there? If you're talking, I can't hear you.
Am I having, maybe I'm having trouble with the internet? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope it's not me, because I know one day this week it was me.
No, it could be me. Okay, I think I do better when I'm just reading from a document.
It's okay. You can pass to somebody else too if you want, because there's lots of need to do it.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I'll pass, see if anybody else.
Rebecca, maybe you can help us with our review.
Yes, I cannot see. My computer have a problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
If I give you the point, could you maybe help us?
Which one?
I'll read it to you. The precursor to the angel of Revelation 18 arrived.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be mistaken with the angel of Revelation 18, 1-3. So you have the precursor, but not Revelation 18, 1-3 at the Sunday law, when his
Mhm.
message is empowered and ready to swell to a loud cry. Can you summarize that a little bit? That's probably is a bit of a summary, but so how do we understand the precursor? What is the precursor?
Precursor is I don't know how to say precursors. The beginning?
That's one way to look at it.
Mm,
We remember that she says that Ellen White places the
I know Chinese words.
Chinese words. Well, maybe we'll put on our translation so we can all hear it. Oh,
Because I remember the star when Jesus was born. The
Mhm.
star lead the wise men, and I remember that was was that
precursor.
yeah, the
Which one do you
star.
think comes first?
The star was a precursor.
It was a harbinger.
Oh, that harbinger. Oh, the harbinger.
Yeah, that's
The
what we're working on we'll review that again tonight. But yeah, the harbinger. But also when you talk about the early rain, or when you talk about the rain and the angels, in particular, the Revelation of the angel of Revelation 18, 1-3, she's placing the latter rain, the loud cry, the empowerment of the second angel. The empowerment of the second angel empowers the third. And that's what we were looking at the other night. The empowerment of the second angel empowers the third. And she places all of that at the Sunday law. So in that context, what does these notes mean by the precursor?
The first stage
Of
Sunday law, the laddering.
Yes, the early rain coming in two parts.
Yeah.
Coming in two parts.
Yeah.
So then you have the angel of Revelation 18, the loud cry, the empowerment of the second empowers the third. You have all those events that she gives us at the Sunday law. But what do we know about? What do we know what's the distinction between an arrival and an empowerment?
Arrival is like the Revelation 10, the angel fly in the sky.
Okay.
And in power is the angel actually land in the earth, in the land.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's an arrival when it's flying and it's in the air, and then an empowerment when it's on the ground.
Yeah.
So with that, if the Sunday law, at the Sunday law, the empowerment of the second empowers the third, then what does that mean? If the empowerment of the second and the third are at the Sunday law, what does that mean? What had to have happened?
The second empower the third.
Yeah, you have the empowerment of both. But for them to be empowered, what had to happen first?
Empower the third. I don't remember.
Somebody else?
They had to have already been there to be empowered, so they arrived at 9/11, both of them.
Yeah, because going back to this line here, that if all that happens at the Sunday law, then they had to have, if the empowerment is at the Sunday law, I guess I'll go down here. If the empowerment on the line of 144,000, the empowerment of the second angel empowers the third. So the empowerment of the second and third, she places both at the Sunday law and the loud cry here. So if they're empowered here, then the previous waymark is where they arrive, right? So you back up to 9/11 and they arrive. So you have the arrival of the second and the third angels here.
At the Sunday law, the Sunday law waymark, right?
Yeah, the empowerment is at the Sunday law. That's what Ellen White gives us. Is it the empowerment? I think we went through some of those quotes. That the empowerment happens at the Sunday law. And plus, when you look at the agricultural model, you look at the former rain, and here's the Sunday law here, and so it's the latter rain as well. So you have the latter rain, but what did we find out about? I don't think we're quite there yet. That's down here. Yeah, so.
Can you explain what is the second angel's message in power at the third angel's message in power? Could you please explain again, repeat? I still don't get it.
You mean between the empowerment and the arrival? Or
No,
what
the second
message is?
angel's message in power, the third angel's message in power. How do we understand this?
You mean like the actual message itself?
I remember the waymark at the Sunday law is the third angel's message arrived, right? Third angel's message in power. So how can we understand the second angel's message in power, the third angel's message?
I wish I had that quote in front of me. Does anybody have that quote in front of them that we read? If not, I'll try to find it.
It's Early Writings 277.1.
Yeah, do you have it in front of you to read?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I remember that, but I forgot.
That's okay. That's why we're doing this over and over again. So, because we all forget.
Okay, the message of the fall of Babylon as given by the second angel is repeated with the additional mention of the corruptions which have been entering the churches since 1844. The work of this angel comes in at the right time to join in the last great work of the third angel's message as it swells to a loud cry.
So the empowerment of the second joins with the third, right?
Yes.
So the second angel's second angel's message in power. Join.
Empowered.
Huh?
Yeah, empowered.
Oh,
So, so then she places that here as with what Gloria was just reading. Sorry, with what Gloria was just reading. So she places this here. So if the second and the third angel are both empowered at the Sunday law, because the empowerment of the second is what empowers the third, then you have to back up to the previous waymark, and that would be their arrival.
so the second angel empowered, which means the prophecy fulfilled at the Sunday law.
The prophecy, what? I just missed one word.
At the Sunday, because in power means this prophecy fulfilled.
Yes, yes.
Become
Thank you.
real.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. sorry. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, so and we went through that on Wednesday, that it's because when you look at 9/11 being methodology is confirmed with the arrival or you have the empowerment of the first angel. Now you can rightly predict the Sunday law. So there's a prediction that the Sunday law will happen in our lifetime. And that is what you're talking about with the empowerment being here at the Sunday law. It's the prediction fulfilled. So the second angel arrives, there's a prediction that's fulfilled, right? And so, and now you're able, because you're confirmed in the methodology, now you're able to rightly predict that these events here that are going to happen in our lifetime. So you're able to predict it. So the prediction comes true. Thank you for bringing that point up, because I forgot about that. So the prediction comes true that was understood in here based on the second angel's message.
So what you're saying is,
Sorry, guys. I gotta call her back later.
from what I heard Aaron say, it's a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. 9/11 is a harbinger for Daniel 12:1. That's what I remember him saying.
Yeah, and that's coming up in one of the other points, because that is one of the points that's there. So it is a harbinger, and that kind of mixes in with where we're at with the confirmation of it. And we'll go into the harbinger just a little bit more as well, or you can now if you want. I'm going to try to send a text to Linda to let her know that we're in Bible study. But do you want to talk about the harbinger a little bit? How do we know that?
That was the extent of my knowledge there.
Nice try. Nice shot.
So how can we understand that the Sunday law Wema, the third angel's message arrive?
Say that again, sorry.
How can we understand the Sunday law the third angel's message arrive at Sunday law Wema?
How do you understand here?
Yeah,
The Sunday law would come in our lifetime?
going together, right? The second in power join the third angel's message arrive. So the Sunday law Wema mean second angel's message in power and the third angel's message arrive.
No, the
Both empowered.
they're both empowered.
Both empowered.
They're both empowered. Because the quote that Gloria read shows us that it's the empowerment of the second that empowers the third. Is that right? The way you read it, Gloria?
So when the third angel's message arrive, which way, Ma?
So if they're both empowered here, based on the quote that Gloria read, if they're both empowered here, then they had to have already arrived, right?
So the third angel's message arrived at 9/11.
Right. Right. And in my mind, I think of it as how, you know, how when she did that one presentation where she showed the line of the priest, just the line of the priest, and how she marked 2014 as a turning point, and how she drew a box up there and said, you know, that God gives you a box, and in that box is marked Sunday law, and you don't understand it, but he's going to unpack that box. So I think that's the way we can understand, especially when she's going through the presentations where she's talking about the complexity of the message, where back here, God gives us what we can handle at the time. So I think if I'm hearing your question right, is how do we know the Sunday law here? But based on the methodology being confirmed, you can then know that you're going to go on in your lifetime and see these events unfold. And so you have a message here, but remember that even in 1989, you had a message but you didn't fully understand it. So you have an increase of knowledge, you have a formalization of the message. So the message becomes is being unpacked. You have that in each of these waymarks where there's an increase of knowledge and a formalization of the message. And as we get closer, we're right about in here, as we get closer, we're understanding more clearly, but going through, and we went through this on, I think it was a study that I did last Sabbath, Speaking of a Nation, and how talking about how we had such a simple message back here, and people were getting nervous that things are, you're talking about the errors of the people in the past, and so how can we trust that you're teaching the correct message? But remember that God gave us a simple message that we could understand at the time. And at each stage, that's what it's at, what we deal with is God gives us a simple message that we can understand. And when you're dealing with a dispensation, God gives you how you can handle it. And then it opens up more and more. So I don't know if that helped. Did that help, Rebecca?
Yeah, we do review because happened.
Yeah. So, okay, so the record taking. What did we study? What did we learn about the record taking for the line of the 144,000?
Judgment of a living.
Right. And what did we understand about the judgment of the dead, the beginning of the judgment of the dead, and you had the beginning of the judgment of the living. What did we understand about that?
Because 1844, October 22, the beginning of judgment of death.
Right. In 1798, what was, well, not in 1798, but you have the arrival of the first angel, right? And William Miller eventually begins preaching. What is he preaching?
The judgment, the first angel.
Yeah, he's preaching the judgment, right? But he's preaching that the earth is the sanctuary, and the so we know he had it wrong, but he's making a prediction of judgment, but he was making the prediction of the executive judgment when it's not. So so you have a prediction, and then you have, I hope I said this right, Phil might have this one better than I do, but you have a prediction, and then you have the, what do you call it? You have the record keeping begins, and then the judgment. Is that correct? How I said that?
So there's two stage. The first needed to record, and then the final is the judgment. In order to judge, and the first thing needed to be like a record in the book.
Right. Phil, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was going to comment on what you were saying, and what you said was correct. But when you said it, you were circling the wrong waymarks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just circle. I mean, your wording was correct, but your circling was. Yeah, you circled 1798 as the record taking and 1844 as the judgment. But the order is correct. But the record taking begins at 1844 because the judgment itself is at the Sunday law, but you need a record to be judged. So the record keeping begins at, for us, 9/11.
Correct. Sorry, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah, and then at Sunday law is when we begin the judgment.
Right. You're right. Thank you for that. I'm glad you guys keep an eye on me too, because I get it. I have a lot juggling in my head too. So the main thing there, though, is what we're seeing is from that particular study is how the rain comes in two parts, how the second angel and the third angel come in two parts, and how the judgment of the living comes in two parts. And we get all that from the Millerite line and other lines. We got the early rain using the line of progression and then also repeat and enlarge. So because with the early rain, she talks about in two different places, she's going to talk about the rain, the early rain being with the disciples in the ancient Omega of ancient Israel, and then the outpouring, full outpouring at the end of the world, which would be our time. Then she also talks about the rain, the early rain being the few drops that are breathed on the disciples at his ascension. And then at Pentecost, the full outpouring. So we saw that the rain comes in two parts. We see that on the agricultural model, that the rain comes in two parts. So you see the rain comes in two parts. You see the judgment of the living comes in two parts. You see the second and third angel there, that the second angel coming in two parts. And then you also have the sealing of the 144,000 begin. Who can summarize the sealing of the 144,000?
Revelation 7,
Revelation 7.
sealing.
What's it connected to that makes it to where we know?
Like a 4 angry horse.
Yeah, does anybody have that quote handy? 20 MR 216:6. Anybody have it by chance, or trying to get it?
I had a quote on it. I had 3 SM 409.1. This is from Revelation 7.
I have it here. Oh. Do you,
Is that correct?
Go ahead and read it. I'm not sure. Go ahead and read it.
I don't have it in front of me. I have the quote.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have the 20 MR
Okay.
216.6.
okay.
Okay, it says angels are holding the 4 winds, represented as an angry horse seeking to break loose and rush over the face of the whole earth, bearing destruction and death in its path.
Okay, where do we get the 144,000 in the ceiling? Revelation 7. Then you connect it to the 4 winds, right? You connect the 4 winds to Islam.
Right.
We might be missing something there. I might be missing something there. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, so this is where we left off. We're in Article 4. We're partway through it. We went through the church received a harbinger, which that was just brought up, that the Sunday law and the close of probation is approaching. Who remembers how we understand 9/11, because that's what this is all about, 12 events, prophetic events that happened at 9/11. Who remembers how we understand that 9/11 was a harbinger?
Well, at first we thought that the chapter Testimonies 9, so paragraph 11, because of the burning buildings she's talking about in New York City, we thought that she was talking about 9/11 at that point. But then when we studied it closer, we realized that she was talking about the close of probation. So, and 9/11 is not the close of probation, it's the second way mark, and the close of probation is the 4th way mark. And so we realized that 9/11 had to be the harbinger of the close of probation. So it's telling us what the close of probation is parts of what it's going to look like. And so that's how.
So
Is that right?
Yeah, so what does it tell us that the close of probation is going to look like?
That's a good question, because like,
What happened on 9/11? Who?
well, it was the East Wind, right? So radical Islam attacked the United States and took down two of the tallest buildings that represented economy, and so I can't predict, but we know that the East Wind is going to come in after the King of the South dies, or like it has to do with the South Wind. It has to do with the South Wind, and then comes the East Wind.
Yeah, first
I-
the south, then the east. Yeah.
Yeah. So because everything's so not literal, but spiritual, and it's 1 + 2 = 3. I hesitate to say, well, it's going to look like this or it's going to look like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
just thinking simply, who is it?
Okay, who is it? Who is it? Okay, radical Islam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you're right to bring that up, the south wind, and then the east wind follows it. So you're going to see the south wind die, and then the east wind will follow that at the close of probation. And there was another point that I had through my head there that to bring up, if it can come back to my mind, the harbinger. It's escaping my mind. Maybe it'll come back to me. But so yeah, so you see radical Islam. That angry horse is let loose. It's going to be the destruction of Babylon. I know I'm closer in my thought to, oh yeah, okay. So in the first and second woe, what was the role of radical Islam? What was the role? What were they to do?
They weren't. They were supposed to hurt
the armies of Rome.
That's the one I'm looking for. Who said that? The armies of Rome.
Jackie said that.
Jackie. That's what I was looking for. The armies of Rome. That was escaping my mind. I wanted to make sure we brought that point up.
Yeah, because that's the king of the North, America.
So it's the armies of Rome is what the Islam attacked, radical Islam attacked in the first woe and the second woe was the armies of Rome. Okay. So then Jesus begins to build his temple or his church on earth. How did we see that in ancient Israel? He begins to build his temple. In ancient Israel. I don't think we read the quote. We probably just referenced it.
With the disciples, is it?
Yeah. The disciples, what? Say a little more.
The 5 disciples, I think, in Matthew, somewhere in Matthew.
And so when he calls I think I'm thinking of Desire of Ages as well. I think it's in Desire of Ages where she talks about where he calls the first 5 disciples and what does she connect that to?
Is it foundation or?
Yeah, the foundation. The foundation. Okay, so just as Noah began to build his ark, second waymark, Elijah began to build his altar, second waymark. Therefore, the line of 144,000, the foundations can begin to be laid. So you see at the second waymark, Noah begins to build the ark. Elijah builds the altar. You have the Red Sea crossing. We haven't talked about that. But you have the calling of the first 5 disciples, and then Christ begins to lay the foundations of the church. So I think that's kind of where we left off, and we'll skip over to the other one now, back to where we were at. And we were here, no sin from 9/11. And let us just real quick do just remember the foundation. I don't think you can see it unless I pull it up, right? Phoebe, watch your foot. There you go. Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what we've been working on with this. We saw line upon line, because we look at that in relation to the line upon line, the methodology being confirmed. We saw it arrives here. We saw the mountain, which is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the stone that is called out. So the calling out begins at 1989. Then when you have 9/11, we went into briefly the tarrying time, but also we went through the foundations. That's what we just got from Elijah, the temple, building the altar, and ancient Israel, the Omega of ancient Israel, where Christ calls his first 5 disciples, and she calls that the foundation. That's the foundations being laid. And then Noah also begins to build the ark. Got the record keeping. We went through how she places the empowerment of the second empowers the third. And if they're empowered, they're on the ground, it means they had to have first arrived. They arrived back at the previous waymark. We saw the judgment of the living began. We saw the record keeping began. And the way that we got the harbinger is that at the close of probation, those passages that one of them that was just talked about at 9/11, at Testimonies Volume 9, and then Life Sketches, and one other one I think there is. But we see that those passages, more careful reading, are actually talking about when there's no more mercy. So we see the four limbs let loose, and there's no more mercy. So the harbinger lines up with 9/11 and those towers coming down. So we saw that with the confirming of the methodology, you can now predict the Sunday law. And what Rebecca was bringing out is this empowerment of the third angel is the fulfillment of the prophecy. And the prophecy was, the prediction was that the Sunday law was imminent. So the third angel of empowerment is this prophecy fulfilled, just like the second angel, or the first angel being empowered is the fulfillment or confirming of the prophecy and the confirming of the methodology. So then we went down, we left off, I think here, we went down and started just going over the foundations just as a refresher for us. And we just took this 9/11 to 2014 to kind of expand it out a little bit. And we saw that we saw that when Christ was baptized, did he start his work right away?
No.
What did he do?
He tarried in the wilderness.
In the wilderness. Okay. So we see the tarrying, we see the wilderness. So therefore, 9/11 being this arrival of the second angel, but the work doesn't begin right away. So 2004, we just went through the events that are in the notes that Aaron laid out. And you have, for the Nethinims, you have, 9/11 in 2004 is the first time that it's now preached, understood and preached in 2004 about 9/11. And then you also had Michael Moore's movie Fahrenheit 9/11 that is actually working on the Nethinims prior to, they're in their period of darkness still, where they're getting this movie come out as well. Then 2005, you have the first teaching beginning to teach the 2520. In 2007, the 1843 and 1850 chart. 2008, you've got the doctrine and understanding of the judgment of the living. beginning back here. And then 2009, I added this one. He didn't have this one in his notes, but I did add it just so that we remember that Elder Parmenter teaches the presentations that he did on the 2520 revealed. And then 2012, you have time setting. And then you have a test, the prediction of the Sunday law. So the foundations were laid in this history here. Everybody follow that? So here, who was it? Christine and who else? Ava, I think, we're talking about how you felt like there was just this storm of a message coming on us. There's quite a bit there. It was just spread out over a long period of time, and we weren't here when this was all happening. But we're definitely seeing the events speeded up and the amount of information in the latter rain being much more. Okay.
So foundations laid after 9/11 is 2520.
The foundations begin to be laid after 9/11. Right here, we can go back up and here just a little bit here. Let's see, we did the stones. Let's see. Thus from 9/11, we could start to lay our foundations. However, just as Christ did not start to lay his foundations until after the wilderness, this movement did not start to lay our foundations until 2004. And this is where Elder Tess identifies the laying of the foundation. So Elder Tess places 2004 as the laying of the foundations. This is where it actually began, as in 2004, the doctrine of 9/11 was first publicly preached, which we just went through. And then interesting, in 2004, the Nethinims also received their glorious light on 9/11, which then rested down upon these companies to enlighten all who would receive it. That's Early Writings 240, paragraph 2, during their time of darkness. So that's actually still during their time of darkness, as Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 was released in 2004. So this glorious light rested down upon these companies to enlighten all who would receive it. So then in 2005, the 2520s first publicly preached. 2007, you have the 1843 and 1850 charts. 2008, you have the judgment of the living. Oh, we didn't put this one on here as well. 2008, you have the judgment of the living. 2012, you have time setting up until the last foundational stone was laid, which was Ezra 7:9 and fractals. So we didn't actually, I think we didn't, we left off kind of there, I think, because I don't remember going through that point. We just talked about how we would get to that point. So you have Ezra 7:9. And fractals. What did fractals teach us? What was fractals to this movement?
The three groups, the priests, Levites, and Nethinims.
Right, the three groups. So this gave us a 10-year test ending in 2014, because she marks the beginning in 2004, the beginning of the foundations. So this gives us a 10-year test from 2004 ending in 2014 at the great test for the people of God. Second selected messages 81.1, the image of the beast or Sunday law waymark on the line of the priests. So you have, this is the great test, right? So now looking back, we're in 2022 and we're looking back and we're seeing all these events, right? That, because remember that even though Sunday law was predicted, it wasn't understood. And it wasn't understood. And now we're looking back and we see what were the three, just to see where our memory's at, what were the three things that happened? There was a lot of other things, but the three main things that pertain to government in 2014 that related to the Sunday law.
The court versus Hobby Lobby,
Purging of the Republican Party.
I think it's Burwell, right?
Yeah.
Purging of the Republican Party, you said?
Yes.
And the third one.
Mitch McConnell blocking the Supreme Court nominations.
Yeah, and he did the lower judges too. He was actually blocking Obama from appointing the lower court judges as well before he even got to that point. So he was leaving all those empty seats so that those lower courts for the president that they were planning on getting in 2016 would have all those seats to fill, and he could stack all those lower court judges with far right conservative judges, and then also blocking the Supreme Court judge there in that last year as well. So you have a 10-year test here from 2014, 2004 to 2014. And then you arrive at your Sunday law. That your Sunday law, you get Ezra 7:9, which gives you the three groups. And then your Sunday law involved, what was the Hobby Lobby case? Does anybody remember?
That I believe had to do with Obamacare and coverage of the contraceptives for women.
Right. The employer didn't want to provide contraception in their health care plan for their employees. So the employer is deciding for the employees what they can and can't have, taking away their rights in order to exercise their religious right, and they're taking away the rights of their employees. Okay, so that's the image of the beast, the Sunday law waymark on the line for the priests. It's kind of interesting when you think about it that we get this back in here real quick. That's for, because you get Ezra 7:9 right at this time, where here you are thinking that 2014 is going to be the Sunday law, and God says, wait a second, and he opens up and shows us the three groups. So yes, it was a Sunday law, but it was a Sunday law for the first group. And I do like to keep this in mind, how we have, because I don't think I have it up here. You can still see it. If we were to just do, you have 14, 19, 21, and Sunday law. And they're all Sunday laws. We've been there, we've been there, we've been there, and we're headed to here. The last one before the close of probation. Which to me is kind of frightening. Especially when we're searching ourselves to see, do we really understand, and are we, are we one of those ones that's, I don't think I am, taking part of the message out and wanting to discard parts of it. I don't see myself as doing that, but I know I always have to continue to ask the Lord that I'm following every step of the way, embracing everything. Because when you hear her give the presentations she does, it doesn't sound like a lot of people in the movement are embracing everything. Okay, So no sin from 9/11. This is where we left off. Now that we did all that review, the review is good for us. No sin from 9/11. An important detail to notice is that Noah's message was without error, as was his ark. And he's quoting from, or taking that from Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, 71.3. So Noah's message was without error, and his ark was without error. Elijah did not have to construct and reconstruct his altar, going back and fixing errors that he made. So his altar was correct. And we know his message and his altar were fully acceptable to God. When Solomon laid the foundations to the first temple, he too had them laid perfectly. He did not have to dig them up and correct any errors. Jesus also gave his message perfectly from 27 AD. So the lines clearly show us that the messages this movement has received from 9/11 to 2014 were perfect and is exactly as God had directed. Volume 1 of Spirit of Prophecy 71.3. If you remember at 9/11, the message and methodology was confirmed to be true and correct. And God expects us to have faith in it from that point onward. This is what we mean when we teach no sin from 9/11. We're referring to corporate prophetic sins. In other words, the prophetic testing messages that this movement has received from 9/11 have no error. It is not referring to individuals and their moral sins, or even their prophetic sins for that matter. It is the prophetic testing messages that this movement has received from 9/11 have no error. This is the difference between the field and its crop. The field, the corporate church, is distinct from the wheat and the tares, the individuals, and the rain, the foundational messages. The plowing cleans the field. Go ahead, somebody gonna say something?
Yeah, what do you mean by error? Just so I'm clear in my mind.
That the prophetic message does not have error.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm glad you asked that, because I do. Well, actually, that does make sense. You guys can hear me, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because from 9/11, this is all that's opened up, right? But I was in my mind as we were reading that, thinking about, well, what happened here with FFA when Elder Parminder developed the message of time setting to predict 2014 as a Sunday law. That's all correct. But what happened with FFA?
The other way.
Well, they didn't follow. Well, yeah, they did, but and they were still along in the movement, long, and yet not accepting it. But the message was correct, and this is the foundations. The foundations are, 9/11, the 2520, the two charts, the judgment of the living beginning at 9/11. The 2520 revealed develops into the message of time setting, predicting the 2014 would be the Sunday law. It's all correct. And I think what I was thinking in my mind when I was reading what he said, it's like many of us were listening to Elder Jeff and didn't know anything about that. So that message is correct. What we just went through, those foundations, the message is correct and there's no error. Okay, so this is the difference between the field and its crop. The field, the corporate church, and I believe when he's saying that, because if we remember right, these are messages I know I need to review, the ones that he does on Matthew 13, that Ellen White, I might have it backwards to which one says which, that one of them says that the field is the world and one says the field is the church. And I don't know if it's her saying it in two different places, but Christ says it too. So the field is, and remember that you're just going to begin to learn Ezra 7:9 as well. So the field, the corporate church, is distinct from the wheat and the tares. So when you're on this fractal level with the priest, it's the church, is distinct from the wheat and the tares, or the people, the individuals, and the rain. So you have the field, and then you have the wheat and the tares, and then you have the rain, which is the foundational messages. Because remember, what we're looking at is the former rain, the latter rain. We're looking in this dispensation, and this is when the foundations are laid. So, so the rain being the foundational messages. Did everybody follow that? Because that dispensation is the dispensation of, actually all the way to the Sunday law, is the, we pick up 2014 being just for the priest, but the Sunday, all the way to the Sunday law, you have the former rain. So you have the field, the corporate church, which is distinct from the wheat and the tares, which is the people, and the rain, which is the foundational messages. The plowing cleans the field of all thorns, which the sins of our fathers have left, much like Elijah repairs the altar of God, which the apostasy of Israel has allowed the priests of Baal to tear down. Then the rain sent by God from heaven represents the messages or foundational stones being laid. It is without error when it falls on the field, the corporate church. That is also why in the agricultural model, the early rain begins at 9/11 and not before or after. The rain represents the foundational doctrines which fall from 9/11. So you have, I don't think we didn't mark it, but this foundations, the foundations equals the rain. And so you have the rain falling, the early rain. Okay. So the rain represents the foundational doctrines which fall from 9/11. And then the tarrying time from 9/11. In part 3, we mentioned that the parable of the 10 virgins repeats in both a progressive and repeat in enlarged fashion. What does he mean there? Progressive and repeat and enlarge. What does he mean?
You mean line upon line?
Yeah, what's the difference between progression and then repeat and enlarge or line upon line?
Progression is just from Millerite history continuing to our history 144,000, whereas the line upon line is comparing Millerite history versus our history.
Right, right. So in the repeat and enlarge model, Millerite history repeats at the end of the world, but in the model of progression, the tarrying time, which began October 22nd, 1844, continues through until God's people are awoken by another midnight cry at the end of the world. And so we are living in that time and experience that midnight cry. Parable of the 10 Virgins of Matthew 25 also illustrates the experience of the Adventist people. Chapter 25 opens with the words, "Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins." Here is brought to view the church living in the last days, the same that is pointed out in the close of chapter 24. That's Great Controversy 393, paragraph 2. Then we have, when the third angel's message is preached as it should be, power attends its proclamation, and it becomes an abiding influence. It must be attended with divine power, or it will accomplish nothing. I'm often referred to the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of whom were wise and 5 foolish. This parable has been and will be fulfilled to the very letter. For it has a special application to this time. And like the third angel's message, has been fulfilled and will continue to be present truth till the close of time. So you have a repeat and enlarge, or a line of progression. To be repeated at the end, or one big long, or where the end of it. I wanted to leave this subject until last so that you'll be familiar with the following diagram that incorporates both the repeat and enlarge, or alpha and omega model, with the model of progression, as well as the model in the last diagram where the building of the temple begins in 1989, but 9/11 is just an ongoing part of that story. We might have to spend a moment here. You'll notice that unlike the model of rain and the second angel's message, when the parable of the 10 virgins repeats at the end of the world, it does not do so in 2 stages. So unlike rain and the second angel's message, which come in two parts, 2 stages, the parable of the 10 virgins repeats at the end of the world, but not in 2 stages. That is why I could not present this parable with the models of rain and the second angel's message. While it is similar to those 2 models in that it is both progression and repeat and enlarge, it also bears similarity to the model of the building of the temple in that it has a beginning, 1989, then the story just continues on through the various waymarks. Let's see. Because in here he's marking the building of the temple begins at 1989, but 9/11 is just an ongoing part of that story. You'll notice that unlike the model, okay, so I get the part about the rain and the second angel, they come in 2 stages, but with the 10 virgins, even though it repeats at the end, so it's a repeat and enlarge, and then it's a line of progression beginning in there. So at 1989, 9/11, we begin the tarrying time. Maybe we'll go on and be able to better understand that. So to present the tarrying time at 9/11 also incorporates debatably the most amount of different models than any other study. So it was preferable that all these models should already be presented before the tarrying time was presented. So he's singling out the tarrying time and the models that all show that the rain comes in 2 parts, the second angel comes in 2 parts, and you have also the judgment of the living comes in 2 parts, but it's not going to be the same as the tarrying time. In the parable of the wheat and the tares, the servants slept, Matthew 13:25, at 9/11. After the sowing. This parallels the tarrying time when the 10 virgins slumbered and slept. So in the parable of the wheat and the tares, the servants slept, and that's Matthew 13 at 9/11 and after the sowing. This parallels the tarrying time when the 10 virgins slumbered and slept, Matthew 25:5. Ellen White applies this tarrying time in 2 different ways. She says the call, behold, the bridegroom cometh, was given under the first angel's message, Great Controversy 393.4. Then she applies the tarrying time to the spring of 1844, Great Controversy 391.1, making application to the tarrying times of Habakkuk 2:2, Ezekiel 12:21-25, 27-28, Great Controversy 392. I think maybe what we'll do is break those down next week to go through them, or when we study this again. The true midnight cry, and maybe if we can, before we meet, it'll probably be Wednesday, before we meet, try to read some of these references so that we'll better understand this point here. The true midnight cry by Samuel Snow then woke up the virgins beginning July 21, 1844, Great Controversy 398.3. However, Ellen White then reapplies the tarrying time to the great disappointment of October 23rd, 1844. It's Great Controversy 407.1 to 408.1 and Early Writings 236.2. We could illustrate it like this with Model 1 in blue and Model 2 in red, both illustrating everything Ellen White has told us. Model 3 in black illustrates the hidden treasure we have derived from parable methodology. Alpha and Omega parable methodology demands that how it happened in Alpha history, it repeats in the Omega. So it's up to us, using the repeat of history methodology, to discover the three waymarks in black below that Ellen White does not give us. I can see we're going to be spending time on this one again. Okay. So model 1, what Ellen White gives us, if I'm looking at this correctly, you're looking at, I don't know why he just has Sunday law door, because they're not all the same. What is a shut door? Okay. But then I think then this is referring to if this were looking at 1863, I think. I don't know if anybody else, we'll kind of look at these and try to, we're going to have to probably spend some time on this. I know I do. Because
Isn't that progression? So that's Millerite line and then our line, their progression.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And I was actually, what I was going to say first was before I said 1863, I was actually going to say the Great Controversy, the line of Adventism. So yes, I think that's
yes.
Yeah, that's what I actually meant to say. Thank you. I'm very confused right now, but thank you. So yes, this looks like the line of Adventism. I think I was thrown off because he just has Sunday law and 12.1 here instead of what we're used to seeing is Sunday law, close of probation, and second Advent. So looking at the Sunday law of our time, and they must awake somewhere. Okay, so model 2. So what, help us out here, Gloria?
So model 2, that's Ezra 7:9. You see the sleep is April 19, 1844. Awake is August 15, 1844. And that's the shut door is October 22nd, 1844. And I think that's also showing a progression to our line there too.
So the message goes, behold, the bridegroom cometh. This one shows a shut door at 1844. This one shows 1844 as a tarrying time and go to sleep. And this is what you were pointing out, I think.
Yeah, that's the first day of the first month, or that's the arrival of second angels. And then in the midnight, that awake is the empowerment of the second angel. And
you would have August in here, right?
Yes, August 15. And then that shut door would be the arrival of third angel in the Millerite, the original Millerite line. There.
Okay, so the line of progression would all the way till the end. Thank you. The line of progression, and if I get this wrong, because it sounds like you got it a little bit better than I do in your head already. You've got behold the bridegroom cometh in 1844 is the tarrying time, and they're tarrying all the way through till they awake sometime before the Sunday law, all the way to our time, the Sunday law. But in model 2, she's giving us that there's a tarrying time before here. She gives the tarrying time in the spring, which is April. Okay, now I remember that. I don't know if you said April, maybe that's what you said and I missed it, but April.
Yeah,
19th.
April 19th. That
Right.
was the first day of the first month. That's
Right.
the carry out reckoning and all that.
Okay, yeah, so April 19 is and it was a 6-month period of time, where a 6-month period of time from April 19 to October 22nd. And then in the middle of that, midway, is how we get midway being but this is where midway came from, and that's July 21, 1844. So they go to sleep in the spring. And this is connected, isn't it? Isn't it connected to because Miller actually was predicting this date, if I remember right, that Christ would come back here, and then they realized the 6-month difference, and then, or I think it's Samuel Snow. Who is it? Samuel Snow?
Yeah, Samuel Snow, July 21.
They predict October 22nd.
Yes, yeah.
1844. So that's the midnight cry message there that comes up. So they go to sleep here, and then they're waking up before their shut door, meaning that then if you're going to do a repeat and enlarge, you're going to have that they would have to go to sleep again, because it's going to be fulfilled. Has been fulfilled and will be fulfilled. So they'll go to sleep and then they'll wake up, correct?
Yes. So yeah, I don't want to add too much confusion. So
Yeah, this one we're going to have to spend some time on next time. So so you have model 3, parable methodology. You have the alpha and then the omega. So he's just putting in the dates, but I don't know why he takes these dates out, but he does. He takes these dates out and he puts in 1989 in black. So you see the message, behold, the bridegroom cometh, and then at 9/11 they go to sleep, and then at Panium or the midnight cry they wake up.
So I just want to point out, so in that model 2, you have August 11, 1840, which is the empowerment of the first angel, and then you have the spring, which is April 19, 1844. So those 2 lines combine and come down to 9/11 in our time. So you have 2 Millerite line combining and coming to our line. So it's a pretty big waymark, 911 for us, and very important. I just want to point that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm even going to ask you guys how you're doing on it, because I know that I'm still need to see this one more clearly. So we're going to repeat all this next time. So we'll go through and read what he says. We have a few more minutes, and then we're definitely going to go back and repeat it. So if you can compare and contrast the line of the great controversy, and that's this one, the progression, with the line of the 144,000. He doesn't say it's 144,000. Okay, so the great controversy with the line of the 144,000. I guess you were looking at, if you're looking at that other chart, I think if I put both of them on here at the screen at the same time, I don't know if I could. I probably could. So we'll just look at here, looking at the line of the great controversy and the line of the 144,000. Okay, just to get our bearings on here. So if we compare and contrast the line of the great controversy with the line of the 144,000, 1844 lines up with 9/11. And as we have seen, we can take the prophetic properties of 1844 and parallel them with 9/11. So 1844 here lines up with 9/11. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so we can take the prophetic properties of 1844 and parallel them with 9/11. So the tarrying time beginning on October 23rd, 1844 can also be placed at 9/11. So the tarrying time at 9/11. In the omega of ancient Israel, Christ went into the wilderness for 40 days after his baptism. And we already talked about that, which we have seen lines up with 9/11. Because his baptism is 9/11, then he goes into the wilderness. If you compare and contrast this with the Alpha of ancient Israel, Christ's baptism parallels the Red Sea crossing, and his 40 days tarrying in the wilderness parallels the 40 years the children of Israel then tarried in the wilderness. So you're looking at the beginning of ancient Israel, and you're seeing the Red Sea crossing. Okay. If you compare and contrast this with the Alpha of ancient Israel, Christ's baptism parallels the Red Sea crossing, and his 40 days tarrying in the wilderness parallels the 40 years. So the 40 years tarrying in the wilderness here, and he goes into the wilderness, the wandering, 40 years wandering, okay. 40 days tarrying in the wilderness parallels the 40 years the children of Israel then tarried in the wilderness, while Christ, in a line of success, was tested and prevailed. The children of Israel, in a line of failure, were tested 10 times and failed. So Christ, in a line of success, was tested and prevailed. The children of Israel, in a line of failure, tested 10 times and failed. So we have witnesses from the parable of the 10 virgins, the parable of the wheat and tares, the Alpha and Omega of ancient Israel, and the Alpha of modern Israel, that there is a tarrying time at 9/11. Finally, in part 1, we saw how Islamic power, radical Islamic power, was restrained in 2001, and how we can apply Revelation 7:1-3 there, when the 4 angels are commanded to hold or wait or tarry before they release the 4 winds. So the 4 winds being restrained in 2001 is also tarrying from that perspective. Early writing 38 too. I don't know where I think I'm pulling these numbers here, sorry. So you may remember in that study how God held in check Charles V, and when he was ready to strike at the Reformation, the armies of the Turk appeared on the eastern frontier. Great Controversy 197.2. Again, using a radical Islamic power, using Islamic power to delay the purposes of Rome during the second woe. So during the second woe, God is delaying the purposes of Rome. The reason the 4 winds were held in Ellen White's time, at least, seems to be that the servants, that the third angel, or the workers, servants, third angel, workers, slumbered and slept in disobedience. So you can go to Elder Parmenter's presentations on Matthew 13 and see that the servants, the third angel, and the workers, they're all the same. Slumbered and slept in disobedience. So the reason the 4 winds were held in Ellen White's time, restrained, when were they restrained? August 11th, 1840, right? And what was Islam supposed to do? It was supposed to attack the army of Rome. So there's the restraint, so that because the servants, the third angel, or the workers slumbered and slept in disobedience. We understand, however, that theirs was a line of failure. So the Millerite line is a line of failure, whereas the 144,000 are a line of success. So I'm not necessarily applying this reasoning to 9/11. Had the people of God believed him and been doers of his word, had they kept his commandments, the angel would not have come flying through heaven with the message to the 4 angels that were to let loose the winds, that they should blow upon the earth, crying, hold, hold, hold the 4 winds, that they blow not upon the earth until I have sealed the servants of God in their foreheads. But because the people are disobedient, unthankful, unholy, as were ancient Israel, time is prolonged that they may hear the last message of mercy proclaimed with a loud voice. The Lord's work has been hindered, the sealing time delayed. My only purpose for including the above quote is because it seems like this particular study out of all of them contains one of the strongest warnings for God's people. Whether it be through the wise and the foolish virgins who slumbered and slept, or the 144,000 servants of God who were disobedient, unthankful, and holy, or the workers of the field who slept, or the children of Israel who failed their 10 tests, we can compare and contrast the experience of the wise and the foolish, despite both falling asleep, despite both having virgins and members of the same pure church. You and I have the choice to be Christ in the wilderness or the children of Israel in the wilderness. He's taking a line of failure and a line of success. We have the choice, 5 are wise, 5 are foolish. We have the choice to choose between to be Christ in the wilderness, and he prevailed, or the children of Israel in the wilderness who failed. You and I can choose to perfectly pass each prophetic test as they come in their order, or murmur, complain, and find fault in the leadership. We can choose to be foolish, the foolish virgin who took no oil, representing the messages of God's Spirit. The oil is representing the message of God's Spirit. Review and Herald, February 3rd, 1903, paragraph 5. Or the wise virgin who learns and understands parable methodology, and like the wise men, recognizes a harbinger or 9/11 for what it is. Ellen White makes a clear distinction between the wise and the foolish in her narrative on the tarrying time. After the great disappointment, there were those who were so deeply wounded in their pride, they renounced their faith. Great Controversy 403:3. We have already seen this exact repeat of Millerite history in the foolish virgins during all the various shakings of this movement. Alternatively, there were the wise who stood firm and dared not deny the power of the Holy Spirit, had witnessed to the preaching of their message, Great Controversy 405:3. The same two classes of wise and foolish are again contrasted by Ellen White after the first disappointment in the spring, that's April 19, 1844. And it behooves us to decide for ourselves which class we will be in throughout all the future shakings. They all slumbered and slept, one class in unconcern and abandonment of their faith, the other class patiently waiting till clearer light should be given. Yet in the night of trial, the latter seemed to lose, to some extent, their zeal and devotion. The half-hearted and superficial could no longer lean upon the faith of their brethren. Each must stand or fall for himself. Great Controversy 394:1. I always think about that passage with and I always forget one, though Noah, Daniel, I can never remember the third one. Maybe somebody does and you remind me. They can only save themselves. So, like, somebody remember the name? So we can encourage and such all along the way. But there comes a point in time that if you're not putting yourself into it, you're not going to be able to lean upon somebody else to be saved. Each must stand or fall for himself. You and I must choose which class we will belong to. And since 9/11, we have no excuses. That is why, for me, by far the most important doctrine that comes from the study of 9/11 is at that point, we have heard the voice of God from heaven confirm that this movement is his beloved Son, in whom he is well pleased. John the Baptist testified to the same, and his subsequent lack of faith in the second messenger from prison is clearly the fault of human failure, and in no way the fault of Jesus' message or ministry. From 9/11, we have clear confirmation that his methodology, line upon line, repeat of history, parable methodology, is true and correct, and therefore this movement is his final church, the 144,000. If you believe the doctrine of 9/11, never mind the subsequent studies that came after, then you have no legal right to step off of Noah's Ark. It does not matter if you step off for a good reason or a bad reason, whether you are sincerely convinced that you are right or think maybe you could be wrong, or even if you are in fact right. Perhaps after 9/11, you knew the original intent of Leviticus 26 was not a time prophecy about a group of people, in America in 1798 and 1844. Perhaps you understood there was no Sunday law in 2014, or Smith's rendition of Daniel 11:36-45 was correct. Perhaps you knew after Raphia there was still intercession or wives submitting to their husbands was an outdated concept. Though you would have been correct in all such beliefs, you will still drown if you are not on board the ark. So conclusion, by making application of texts whose original intent are for the close of probation, we went through those passages, making an application whose original intent was for the close of probation, that's the harbinger. We saw how 9/11 was a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. By utilizing line upon line methodology, one can place the arrival of the third angel at 9/11 as it lines up with October 23rd, 1844. Furthermore, when the precursor to the angel of Revelation 18 arrives at 9/11, it joins the third angel. So the third angel has to be present then too. The third angel's message arrived at 9/11 in that now we could predict the Sunday law. Third angel arrives in that we can predict the Sunday law. We know it's imminent in our lifetime, will occur in our generation. The foundations were laid at 9/11, which can be understood by lining up the second waymark from the lines of Noah, Elijah, the Omega of ancient Israel, and the rain in the agricultural model. By comparing the tarrying times from the wilderness wandering in the Alpha of ancient Israel, the testing in the wilderness in the Omega of ancient Israel, the spring of 1844, and the great disappointment of October 22nd, 1844, in the Alpha of modern Israel, the parable of the 10 virgins, the parable of the wheat and the tares, and holding the 4 winds, we have shown that the tarrying time also began in 2001 for the 144,000. So there's some videos that we can watch, and that you guys have the notes if you want to go back and review these studies. Job, Susan said Job. Yeah, I think you're right. I just now saw it in the chat, so thank you. Though these 3, Noah, Daniel, and Job, Noah, Job, and Daniel, to remember houses, but yeah, that we can't be carried by somebody else. And we also can't carry somebody else. God has laid out sufficient evidence for us all. And we'll probably review that still next week to make sure we go through. I mean, I get the tarrying time, but there was some details in there that I wasn't struggling with. And I want to make sure that we all get it. But it's clear that with all we've been through in this study, looking at the foundations being laid, and plus looking at where we're at now, what God expects of us. Anybody have any comments?
I just want to quote Elder Parmender. I was listening to part 6 of Ezra 7:9, and he was saying, I think it's in part 7, he was saying that sealing is settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually. So some of this seems really dry, but we really have to sit down and study them. You know, we have to have an intellectual knowledge of this in order to explain to the Levites. Yeah, just want to comment that.
Yeah. It's an experience. It's built on an experience. And so God confirms the message at 9/11 and enters into a covenant. So we've joined this movement. We entered into that covenant. And the message is perfect all the way through. So to take, as she was drawing on the board in the Vespers classes, as she drew it, to take a little bit of the message out and then a little bit more, right? You can't do that. Because it's all perfect. Okay. Anybody else? Then give me just 1 second and then maybe we can, I gotta do one thing unless Christine's maybe helping me out on her end with something.
I'm doing the regular part. I didn't do the new part.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and close in prayer. Gloria, would you like to close us in prayer? And actually bring in the Sabbath? I think it's Sabbath, it's surely Sabbath for you already.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just now for us.
Okay, let us pray. Dear loving God, thank you for all these messages. We feel so lack of our knowledge, and it's very vast for us to absorb all this. May we have confidence that you will guide us and teach us little by little, and that we will be able to be knowledgeable to share with the Levites. Help us not to be discouraged, but be encouraged that we are coming to the great test for all of us, the Sunday law test, and then your soon coming. May we all have a good night's sleep, and help us as we come together again tomorrow on Sabbath day, and help and continue to guide and lead and bless Elaine for her great work that she's doing for all of us. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.